North Korea has fired another intercontinental ballistic missile just hours after it launched its previous test. Japan says the missile had the potential to reach Japan or the continental United States. A recent increase in tests by Pyongyang has led to a warning coming from Washington that any attack from North Korea would bring an end to Kim Jong-un's regime. DW's East Asia correspondent James Chatter reports.
An intercontinental ballistic missile, or ICBM, rocketing into the skies above North Korea earlier this year. South Korea is already described as a grave provocation. Pyongyang's launch of a suspected similar ICBM on Monday, its fifth this year. Japan says the solid-fuel missile has a potential range of 15,000 kilometers, far enough to hit anywhere on US territory. This is where the latest North Korean missile flew. The ICBM was launched from near Pyongyang, reaching an altitude of 6,000 kilometers. It landed 70 minutes later, about 1,000 kilometers away in waters east of North Korea, just outside Japan's exclusive economic zone. Tokyo and Washington have condemned Pyongyang's actions.
We strongly condemn these actions, which are in clear violation of UN Security Council resolutions and threaten peace and stability in the region.
China, North Korea's only official ally, didn't criticize Pyongyang's launch, saying only that the situation on the Korean peninsula was complex.
Attempts to solve the problem through military deterrence and pressure will not work. It will only backfire, further intensify contradictions and intensify tensions.
Pyongyang says so-called war moves by Washington were the reason for its launch. Amid growing North Korean threats, the US, South Korea and Japan have accelerated military cooperation in recent months. A US nuclear-powered submarine arrived in South Korea on Sunday. And all that straining already fractious ties. This North Korean satellite launch last month led to South Korea withdrawing from parts of a military pact aimed at easing tensions. But North Korea withdrew from the agreements completely. These still images appear to show Pyongyang bolstering its military presence at its southern border since. Now, with the latest ICBM launch, another thorn in the side of stability on the Korean peninsula.
Eric Ballbach is a Korea researcher at the German Institute for International and Security Affairs. He joins me now. Eric, it's good to have you with us. We saw a record-breaking number of North Korean weapons tests this year. Why is the regime in Pyongyang launching so many missiles right now?
You know, I think it's, of course, always very difficult to know for sure the exact reasons as to why North Korea tests particular missiles. In broad, we can say the latest tests, we have to acknowledge three main factors. The first one being the continuation of its nuclear modernization plan that was first announced in January 2021 by Kim Jong-un himself. The second one being the most recent meeting of the nuclear consultative group between South Korea and the US just last week in Washington, which, as you might know, has updated the US and South Korea's contingency planning for what to do in the event of a nuclear attack by North Korea, basically. And the third one, of course, always being internal reasons. We have a very important high-level policy planning meeting in Pyongyang coming up this weekend. We have the 12th anniversary of the demise of Kim Jong-il, and we know that these dates are often symbolically used as well.
Eric, what do you make of this theory? North Korea is providing Russia with munitions for use in its war against Ukraine, and in return, Russia is providing North Korea with missile technology that we're seeing now being put to use. What do you make of that?
You know, we saw closer cooperation and coordination between Russia and North Korea. This is very obvious, but also between North Korea and China, on the other hand. Just today, we saw North Korea's vice foreign minister visiting Beijing, meeting Beijing's foreign minister. So we see this new dynamics on the Korean peninsula. And on the other side, of course, we see a closer trilateral coordination between South Korea, Japan and the US. So this kind of escalation dynamic is already in place, and Russia's closer coordination with North Korea is one aspect. And we see political effects and benefits for North Korea, for sure. As you know, since 2017, we didn't see any new UN Security Council resolutions against North Korea.
The missile that North Korea tested today, excuse me, we understand from South Korea and Japan that it would have been able to hit any point inside the continental United States. How realistic is it that the North Korean dictator would order that kind of attack?
You know, if we look at it realistically, it's of course not very obvious at the moment that North Korea would attack the US or its allies with these kinds of weapon systems. But ultimately, these systems are built to be used in a case of an emergency. And I think what we have to realize is that the dynamics on the Korean Peninsula at the moment are really shifting, are really in flux. And in this sense, of course, we also see that North Korea continuously diversifies its missile system. And this, of course, also leads to a greater threat. You just have to think about an unintended escalation, which could happen, especially in times when we don't have stable communication channels with North Korea. Things like this can escalate very much. And there are also, of course, political challenges and security challenges coming along.
My next guest is Edward Howell. He is a lecturer in politics at the University of Oxford in England. He's also author of the book North Korea and the Global Nuclear Order. Mr. Howell, it's good to have you with us. Let me ask you to start with, what do you think North Korea is trying to tell the world with all of these missile tests?
Thank you very much, and good evening. I think there are two key messages here. The first obvious message is that in the case of Pyongyang, by conducting missile launches, it offers a signal to the authorities in the DPRK that actually its missile systems function as intended. Secondly, there is a very clear international message being sent to the US and, of course, to South Korea as well as Japan, that North Korea's nuclear and missile ambitions are now not just ambitions, they are realities. And that Pyongyang is extremely clear that it is not going to come to the negotiating table anytime soon, because in North Korea, it is a de facto nuclear armed state.
So you're saying then that you buy what we're hearing from Japan and South Korea, that this latest missile test was an ICBM missile capable of delivering a nuclear warhead anywhere inside the continental United States?
Yeah, I mean, this is not the first time we've seen the launch of an ICBM. Obviously, the first ever launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile was in 2017, 6 years ago. And since then, particularly in last year, but also earlier this year, what we can see is that North Korea has expanded both the scope but also the sophistication of its delivery systems and also the diversity of missiles available in its arsenal. This is very consistent with North Korea's foreign and domestic policy priorities, and this was in fact outlined by Kim Jong-un 2 years ago.
You say that North Korea is sending the message, particularly to the United States, that the U.S. is now dealing with a nuclear power. Are you saying that Pyongyang has mastered the technology completely now, not only of a nuclear weapon, but of being able to deliver a nuclear weapon on top of a missile?
We don't know for sure, and it would be highly premature to make an assertion that North Korea has fully mastered. What we do know, and what evidence has shown us, is that North Korea is very much going down this route at quite a rapid pace. And we know its first nuclear test way back in 2006 was extremely unsuccessful. And since then, its capabilities and its ability to pursue these capabilities has expanded. That is a cause for concern.
We know that China is North Korea's most important, one of its only allies. To what extent does Beijing support or perhaps encourage Pyongyang's missile tests as well as its war rhetoric?
Yes, so China does not like having a nuclear-armed state on its border, but it's better than the alternative, which is obviously some kind of conflict, direct conflict on the Korean Peninsula, which would indirectly involve China. I think China's main priority with North Korea is stability and order, lack of chaos on the peninsula. Whilst it does not like having a nuclear-armed neighbour, I think China is still willing to support North Korea, to provide economic assistance to help North Korea evade sanctions, if doing so maintains the status quo of stability.
Edward Howell joining us from the University of Oxford. Mr. Howell, we appreciate your time and your analysis tonight. Thank you.